Welcome back to the second hour of our program. On the line with us is a journalist with the Daily Poster, David Srota's publication, dailyposter.com, Julia Rock. Julia's Twitter handle is JUL1A Rock, or at Daily Poster. And Julia, welcome to the program. Tell me about hiding the union busters.
Thanks so much for having me. So I wrote a story this week about a provision of the Protecting the Right to Organize Act called the Persuader Rule, which was part of the Biden campaign's initial platform on labor reform as well.
This is the PRO Act you're talking about.
The PRO Act, yep. Right. And that's a rule that would require...
Forgive the interruption, which has not been passed. Just I'm concerned about people being confused about not, So,
exactly.
Right.
Yes. It has 47 co-sponsors in the Senate right now.
Forgive my interruptions, Julia. Go for it.
No worries. And the Persuader Rule would require corporations to disclose expenditures during union drives on consulting services or legal services pertaining usually to union busting. Right. So right now during a union drive, corporations are required to disclose when they pay consultants or law firms to interact directly with employees and talk to them about unionizing, but they're not required to disclose expenditures on indirect communication. So that might be, a consulting firm putting together flyers about union dues, or it might be a law firm advising an employer on how it can talk to employees about unions. And this was a story about the legal industry's efforts to make sure that the Persuader Rule isn't passed either through the PRO Act or through executive order. So the American Bar Association has long opposed the Persuader Rule and lobbied against efforts to pass it either through legislation or executive order.
So basically there's a little mini industry within the legal profession, and I shouldn't say a little mini industry, this is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry of union busting, and the American Bar Association is trying to protect this. Obviously, if you look at, in fact, I thought one of the most fascinating parts of your article was, what Amazon did. You want to fill us in on that? Yeah.
So during the Amazon union election in Alabama, the company had kind of a remarkable set of tactics to prevent workers to encourage workers to vote against the union, which included multiple text messages a day that the company was sending to workers about, why the union would be bad for them, mailers that were being sent to the employees, bonuses they offered to employees to quit before the election happened. And presumably there were, big law firms or consulting firms that were kind of advising Amazon on how to do this. Like you said, it's there are hundreds of $millions a year that these law firms and consultants make in the business of advising on union busting. But we don't really know who was coordinating those efforts. Amazon was required to make some disclosures, again, about those firms that were interacting directly with employees, but we really have no way of knowing who was behind the scenes. And obviously, that was a historic union busting effort that got a lot of public attention, but the firms that were advising Amazon on it were able to, keep themselves secret because this rule is not in place.
Right, and they were successful ultimately, which is all the more the tragedy. What are the rules around, right? The current rules around if a corporation just brings all this in-house? I mean, Amazon has. Well, actually, I don't know for a fact that Amazon has an in-house legal department. I'd be astonished if a company that size didn't. If they just do these things in-house, how is that regulated?
Yeah, so it's not my understanding that this rule would apply to that. I do think, though, there, a lot of these big firms, you've probably heard some of the names like Ogletree Deakins, Morgan Lewis, that really are known for what they brand as their union avoidance services, are typically brought on to help coordinate these campaigns. So there's not kind of a requirement, if Amazon is paying its own lawyers to do this, but if they are bringing on these outside firms, then that is when this rule would be triggered.
So you started this conversation. We're talking with Julia Rock, a journalist with the Daily Poster, dailyposter.com. You started pointing out that the Biden administration campaigned on the PRO Act. This is, this legislation that would strengthen the right of unions to unionize and the right of people who want to have a union to get it. Where is the Biden administration on this right now? Where is Congress at on this right now?
Yeah, so this rule in particular, which is part of the proactive persuader rule, is something that Biden could institute through executive order and has not done so yet. In terms of the PRO Act, the Biden administration has said it, supports the legislation, but that's not super meaningful. It's not really meaningful at all as long as the filibuster is in place, because there's not the support of 60 senators. I'd mentioned before, 47 Democratic senators currently support the PRO Act. There are a few holdouts.
Who are the three who don't?
It's the 2 Arizona senators and then Mark Warner from Virginia.
Oh, is that weird? I was expecting you to say Joe Manchin. I get Kyrsten Sinema. Mark Warner from Virginia. Okay, I don't know very much about him. I guess I'm surprised by that. And Mark Kelly from Arizona?
Yes. Yep.
Why would a guy who campaigned as well, I'm not sure he campaigned as a progressive. I suppose guns was a big issue for him because his wife is Gabby Giffords. But have any of those 3 offered any rationale for their failure to support the PRO Act, or have any of them, for that matter, come right out and said that they're opposed to it?
I don't know exactly what their public statements have been on the issue. I do know that all 3 of them, there's a pretty massive campaign right now from the Democratic Socialists of America and a couple of labor unions to, put the pressure on these 3 senators and get them to flip. And I think that pressure was what got Senator Joe Manchin to flip. So I do know that they're under a lot of pressure, both from the left and from labor unions. But
well,
I don't know what their public statements have been.
Yeah, the Mine Workers Union in West Virginia is a major power in that state politically,
right,
and particularly in Democratic politics. And so it makes sense that Joe Manchin would sit up and take notice. Apparently, if you think about Arizona, I've never thought of Arizona as a heavily unionized state. There's not a lot of manufacturing there. Construction, banking, insurance, some agriculture. So you can see where there wouldn't probably be a large union constituency. And Arizona has historically been a very conservative state. Barry Goldwater came out of Arizona. What's the deal with Mark Warner in Virginia?
I don't know exactly what his reasoning is right now for holding out on the PRO Act.
Yeah. Remarkable. And so finally, we're talking with Julia Rock, a journalist with the Daily Poster, dailyposter.com. What can average Americans, what can we do to encourage Congress to pass the PRO Act, or just to this smaller and, arguably finer point that you're making about, what Joe Manchin could do by executive order? What can we do to try to advance this process?
Yeah, so the DSA coalition with national labor unions that I'd mentioned before that is working on the PRO Act, I think has been really effective so far and is definitely worth plugging into. I think that campaign reached 1 million calls they had made in their phone banking efforts sometime last week. So I think that's probably the best option for plugging in to push the PRO Act forward, get these
and forgive me for not remembering, is there a link to that in your article?
No, I don't think there is, but we have covered the DSA PRO Act campaign previously at the Daily Poster, and there is a link in that article.
Yeah, people could just plug it into a search engine and check it out and find out how it works. That's great. Julia Rock, you're doing great work there at the Daily Poster, dailyposter.com. Thanks so much for dropping by today.